Thomas.
Good morning, Professor.
Happy
New Year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a great message to get up to this morning.
Good. I'll get to the paperwork later today, hopefully.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Morning, Darren.
Morning, Sensei.
Hey, Darren. Good morning.
Morning, TJ. Bear with me. Okay. Driving today. On the road today.
You're on the road today. Where are you driving to?
I'm actually headed to the city, so I'm going into New Orleans today. I have a promotional that I need to do, so
Okay.
that's what I'm doing right now. Cutting across. I was gonna try to reverse my camera. Let's see if I can do that. Yeah, hold on. There. That's what I'm cutting across right now. It's called the Causeway. I'm headed over here. That's the city. Back there is a Superdome.
Is that like Pontchartrain, or are you already down toward the ocean?
No, that's correct. That's Lake Pontchartrain.
Made that inroad a few times going to conferences down in New Orleans. So yeah.
Yes, that's where I'm at. I'm on Lake Pontchartrain Causeway.
Okay. You get Tom Deneen. Gonna have a good group today.
Good morning. How's everybody doing? Happy New Year.
Well, happy
Morning,
New Year.
Eric.
Morning, Eric.
Let's see. Morning, Tom.
Morning, George. How are you?
I don't mean to interrupt your coffee.
Well, it's a permanent part of my morning.
Good morning, Tom.
Morning.
What puts you outside?
I know it's a strange image. I have a cane activity to do in about an hour or an hour and a half. So the ceilings are too low in my parents' house to do them in. So I have to be out here in the 25-degree weather. So I consider it part of the character building pursuit of martial arts.
There you go.
I'm just checking the temperature now.
Okay.
Might as well be on a ski slope. It's 28 degrees.
Well, if you get on the cane, you might be able to use
Yeah.
snow.
Possibly.
No, you don't want to remodel the house.
Yeah, that might be an idea.
I have this, before we start here, find this. Bear with me. Come on. I got this little item several months ago. You hold it in your hand. You got to take out the safety pin first. You hold it in your hand. I think you push this button and it just shoots out. It's about 4 feet long. And I don't know how effective it would be as a tool, but it would sure shake someone up to see, have that happen.
Definitely.
Wow.
Anyway, so let's get going. We're 1, 2, 3, there are 5 of us here today. So let's see who else. Al Gauthier coming in. He's going to be our newbie.
I've known Al for 20 years, and he's got quite a background.
Morning, Al.
Good morning, sir.
Are you with? You're with us. Good. Anyway, this is Saturday, January 8th, and we have list of tentative topics. Everybody want to quickly introduce themselves, starting with Thomas?
Sure. I think I know most of you. I'm Tom Deneen. I've been doing martial arts for about 20 years, starting with Al, our new guest. Al was my first martial arts instructor, and he has a background in Korean martial arts mainly, and I learned some Hapkido from him, which eventually attracted me to Jujitsu. So I have Al to thank for that exposure. And I'm a Shodan in Budoshin Jiu-Jitsu. I have a Shodan also in Japanese swordsmanship. And right now I'm in Pennsylvania, not far from Philadelphia. I usually live in Baltimore, but I'm with my parents this weekend.
Okay, and let's just go to Al to make a nice transition.
Good morning, everybody. Local instructor, Bowie, Maryland. Been studying martial arts since about 1973. Started in Taekwondo and Tang Soo Do, and also learned the old style of Hapkido that was based on the teachings of Takeda Sensei, Aikido Jiu-Jitsu from Japan, and Kuksuwan and Bokyu Mosul, and also modern defensive tactics for law enforcement in the military. And I was a police trainer and worked in law enforcement and counterterrorism. And now I'm a semi-retired over the hill martial arts instructor. So good morning.
We're not over the hill. We're still climbing the hill.
All right. I'm just trying to be honest.
Okay. Darren?
Hi, everyone. Good morning and Happy New Year. I'm Darren Mallory from New Orleans, Louisiana. Lived here all my life and started training in traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu back in 1989 under Sensei Jack Garrett, and spent a lot of time with Sensei Kirby. So glad to be here with you.
Okay. Thomas Gentry?
Good morning, everyone. Thomas, or TJ Gentry. I'm from Southern Illinois. Happily under 30 degrees in the Midwest this morning with about 4 inches of snow where we're at. So there you go. I started martial arts in '84, and Kung Fu is my mother art. I came to classical jiu-jitsu in the early 90s, and for more than 20 years have been teaching both as an extension of my pastoral ministry and in Gentry Martial Arts Academy, which has basically gone with me everywhere I've gone. Retired military chaplain and pastor and dad of 5, and got a beautiful wife who's blind, and I'm grateful she can't see me or she'd have left me. So there we go.
Okay. Eric?
Hello, Eric Salih here. I'm over here in Southern California, Los Angeles. I'm about 30 minutes away from Sensei Kirby. I've been in martial arts since I was in 6th grade. I pretty much I originally started in Kung Fu, and I grew up in Muay Thai, Kali, boxing, a bunch of other martial arts, some karate, and I am a Shodan under Sensei George Kirby for Budoshin Jiu-Jitsu. And Happy New Year.
Okay, and I'm George Kirby. I started in Jiu-Jitsu under Seki in 1967, and a student of his for several years. I then also picked up some additional Katsugo from Hal Brocious. Felt I needed to fill in some spaces. From Seki, there are just some things that I thought were missing, and Hal Brocious had a really different approach to the art, so to speak. For him, there was how do you say it was very street oriented, to put it very tactfully. But anyways, and they were both incorporated into what is now Budoshin Jiu-Jitsu. It probably gave me more realistic approach to the art, and there are some people that get upset with some of the things I teach, but that's that's what was taught to me. And my attitude is, if you want to perpetuate the art, we have to, you need to teach what you've been taught. And you can't put it away because it's not appropriate or not nice or something of that sort. Anyway, back to our reality. Our first topic today is there are numerous street strategies essential for survival, all the way from avoidance, the fear factor, for example, fear versus overconfidence, lowering the threat factor, talking a conflict down, how to walk away, the value of simulated situations in a dojo environment, or hardcore self-defense if needed. That's a ton of stuff. Anyone want to anybody want to launch forth with this or pick up on one part of it? Or
I would be interested in knowing, Professor, what does the person who's asking the question do? Because this would sound different if it were coming from a law enforcement official versus a mom wanting to be able to handle something that might happen leaving the grocery store with her daughter. So I guess the context of that would be helpful.
Okay, I think this is one of the few times back we had a whole series of questions that were very similar, and someone suggested I take the time to put them together so that we didn't have as many questions, which really didn't get us too far. But I think what happened here is there are a lot of different things that were put together into one topic. I do agree with you that depending upon who you are determines how you interpret this question, and it can be interpreted in many different ways. So if anyone wants to take just one part of it and say anything, you don't have to handle the whole question or the whole statement. Anyone want to put their
Sure,
2 cents in on anything?
I can go ahead and get this topic started, coming from a civilian / security officer. So this would be my take on this, at least one part, and that is in stressful situations or encounters that you may have as a security guard, I have to learn basically judo fu, verbal judo, in other words. I have to learn how to de-escalate a situation and diffuse it. So if someone is coming at me in a very aggressive manner, how I speak to him and how I posture myself makes a huge difference. For example, I have to remain completely calm. My voice is very monotonistic. I only speak at one level, and I am basically acknowledging the aggressors, what he's saying what he's yelling at me or whatever. I need to be able to switch his mentality from being very, very angry, because if someone is at that level, if they are very angry, they're not to be reasoned with. They can't. You can't get them to calm down until you can get them, bring them down to a level to where we can have a conversation now. So these are all de-escalation tactics that we have to use as a security guard, and I'm sure in law enforcement. And then once you can de-escalate, then you can diffuse the situation. Thankfully, I never had to use any of my martial arts on anybody other than to de-escalate situations. I've had to learn how to keep my distance. For example, the last job site that I worked at as a security officer, I've had to step very far away with the flashlight, ready to in case I need to shine the light at this guy's eyes to blind him, and if I have to really defuse him, because this guy would basically, he's known to be very aggressive towards other people. He could be on drugs. He could be mentally ill. I don't know the situation, but he's known to be very aggressive. So I have to approach him a certain way now that I know who he is, and it's my job to get him off the property. So the last time that I encountered him, he was ready to fight me. I have to back away, and yes, he is following me, but I'm backing away just enough with my flashlight buddy to where if he engages me, he has to run at me, and I would have to use my my martial arts to control the situation. But thankfully, it never came to that. I would add enough of a distance so that he goes back to whatever he's doing, and I can get on the phone with the police to get him off the property, because now he's gotten too aggressive. So these are things as a security guard, or as a person in general, that you have to be aware of. In general, you have to be aware of what people are doing and how they are acting, so that you can make the best decision possible. So in this case, with this guy, he couldn't be reasoned with. He was too aggressive. He was mentally unstable. There was no possible chance for me to de-escalate the situation. All I can do is just keep my distance and keep an eye on him to make sure he does not destroy the property. Otherwise, if it were possible, I would be able to de-escalate the situation, get this person to calm down to a level to where we can have a conversation that I can diffuse the situation. Because the majority of the time, people don't want to hurt other people. They're just angry for some reason, and they're just taking their frustration out on others. And they don't. People in general do not know how to react to that. So that is just one small part of that topic that I can at least get us started on. I'm sure others can share their experiences and knowledge.
Okay, can anyone else want to pop in on this? I mean, how do you call it? For lack of a better phrase, there are various other terms for it. Verbal judo is perhaps your number one skill in de-escalating a situation if you can. Excuse me. I've always made it a point to be as polite as possible. You do need to maintain a commanding voice. You do need to show this other person to some extent that you're understanding of their situation. And if you can, you want to help them. And that's open to different interpretations. But I've found from experience that as Eric said, if you can keep a calm voice and a calm demeanor, you're more likely to de-escalate the situation than if you are really excited and sound tense, regardless of your personal feelings. You can say afterwards, that was a really tight situation for me, but at the time you have to create an illusion that you are under control of the situation. And hopefully the other person will buy into that. And once you get them calmed down a little bit, you can sometimes start negotiating with them to get them to do what you want them to do for their own safety, of course. you don't mention that it's for your safety. But so anyway, if you're not in law enforcement, you know, it depends on what you're doing, what your role is. There are situations where, because of prior experience I had with a particular gang member who, unfortunately, later on, well, not much later on in life, spent a number of times at what's referred to as UCSQ, University of California, San Quentin. If you saw him walking down the street, you would cross the street. And there are times when maybe that happens. But I knew him well enough that I could, you know, he didn't quote unquote scare me. I respected him. And that's important too. That's another characteristic, is to show respect. But we were had a different relationship because I had helped him at a time in his past. Sometimes, I mean, there are a lot of strategies, you know, like, and some of these are kind of paranoid. For example, like, if you walk down the street, you walk in the middle of the sidewalk, not towards a car, not towards a building. You walk against traffic. So if traffic's going one way on the street, you're on the sidewalk, you walk the other way. I mean, if you're looking at avoidance, there are a whole bunch of things you can do to reduce your chances of being a victim. And then you get into how you walk, what you're wearing, who you're with. All these other things start coming into play in terms of not making yourself a victim. But I think lowering the threat, Eric referred to it, lowering the threat factor is the most important factor in here. Whatever you can do to get this person to change their mind about what they're thinking of doing, the less likely you are to have a physical conflict with it. Anybody else want to go on with this? Or?
Yeah, I would. This is something that Al and I have discussed at some length over the years, and in defensive tactics training, it's one of the organizations he set up. The idea of when do verbal de-escalation approaches, when have you gone far enough, and at what point does it change from a verbal de-escalation to having to become physical? And I think that would depend a lot on the role you're playing. A security guard has a different standard of care, a different standard of acceptable behavior than a civilian being confronted by a gang member. So I think the context seems vital, but I'm always curious about, having never been in a street confrontation, at what point the verbal de-escalation you may conclude it's not working and you should get physical. And if it's a skilled attacker, which is probably unlikely, but if someone is skilled, then part of his goal is to get you to think that you're succeeding in de-escalating, with his intention being to attack you anyway. So it seems to be a very gray area, and it's I don't think there's one answer for it, but I'd be curious to hear what the others have to say.
From, if I might, one area that this has come into real world is, so the church I serve is fairly large, and we have a security team, an armed security team, because crazy things can happen in churches. And one of the, even when I'm not saying things that are inciting, frustrating responses, but one of the things that we have learned, and we work with several retired law enforcement who have gone on to specialize in what they call sheepdog ministries, so helping churches, is assume the worst intent and approach with the intention on neutralizing, period, from least violent to most violent, but don't give it time to happen. And what that has led to is on our security team, and I carry myself most of the time. We also have a school, and I'm the headmaster at the school. And one of the things that has precipitated in terms of mindset is we can assume the best later. Right now, let's assume we have to protect the most. And it works. We haven't had any serious incident. Now, we have had some incidents where people were met, and we have a pretty high-tech system. We have cameras and so on, where they were met 2 steps from their vehicle because we suspected something suspicious, and that dealt with the issue. So a lot of this is over the years, and frankly, it's contrary to some of the other things that I do and teach. I have a little bit of a cognitive dissonance at times, but assuming the situation is going to be the worst, do what you can to manage it and then back down from there rather than ratcheting it up too late. That's basically how the training flows out from the experts that we use and what it looks like where I'm at.
Yeah, I would concur that. I know from my experiences as part of the school security team and other areas that we took a fairly assertive approach if someone was where they weren't supposed to be, and whether there is one of us or 4 of us made it to the location at the same time. Our first question was, "May I help you?" And that usually determined the way things went. If they said, "Well, I'm here to meet a friend," it became, well, who are you here to meet? Who are you here to meet? Or if they told me to F off, which has happened, it then became, you need to leave now. I know from working with law enforcement, as a civilian, you tend to want to be more hands off if you can. And it's like for my students, if someone looks like they might attack, our part of our ready position is hands up with the hands facing the person. Like, I don't want to fight. It doesn't mean you're not ready to fight, but as far as the public is concerned, the illusion is that I don't want to fight. If you are in a defensive position and you're up like this right away, it means you want to fight, and they'll be more aggressive. So as Eric said, part of our visual image determines how the other person acts as well. The other issue is, at some point you may have to go to hands-on. I know with working with the LAPD, we came up, they did a lot of research prior to Rodney King in '94. And in terms of what worked, what didn't work on the street. And one of the approaches they went to is that if you're going to put hands on a person, you also need to be verbally communicating with them. One hand that goes under their, let's see, one hand on the wrist, one hand on the upper arm, sort of like, under the upper arm, as, please come with me, let's talk about this. Because you're grabbing with 2 hands, it puts you in pretty good contact with the person in terms of what they may or may not do physically. And you can pretty well sense what they're going to do. It also limits what they can do. And so I've used that technique numerous times with adults and other people that came on the school campus. I'm one of those few teachers that have no problems putting hands on a student or anyone else if I felt it was necessary. And in my 39 years as a teacher, I never got a criticism over what I did. So, you know, it's very, and Al is going to understand this, it's very situational. There is no one clear cut way to deal with any of these things. And that's why, as Eric said, you really need to keep your cool and keep yourself under control, because that's what's going to save your butt. Not just at the time, but when you have to start explaining things to other people. One of the things I'm sure Al is familiar with the term compliance and non-compliance. And I would, when I worked with training law enforcement officers, I'd say, you know, when you do your paperwork afterwards, you really want to use the word compliant as many ways as you can, because it basically means the same thing. And I would jokingly say, well, the suspect was non-compliant, which required a compliance technique in order to secure his compliance to avoid any further non-compliant actions on the suspect's behalf. And you get a chuckle from law enforcement officers, but they understand what you mean. And sometimes your success after the fact is not as well, it's what happened, but it's how you phrase or how you write down what happened. And just one other bit of, this is not legal advice, is when something happens and you've had a chance to calm down, write down and rewrite whatever you think happened to the best of your ability, but don't give that written material to anyone unless you absolutely have to, because it could be used against you in a court of law if you don't say things quote unquote properly. But anyway, any other comments on this? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, there's also because of how the question is phrased, and it also depends on the context of the role of the person. There's also the civilian aspect. Let's say from the point of view of women or children, and they are trying to do their everyday lives, and they are trying to avoid danger as much as possible. But so there are things that they need to do, like they need to be able to be aware instead of being on the cell phone all the time and being completely distracted. You need to be able to scan your environment and for any potential issues that may arise, and you need to be able to have some kind of escape plan, and don't walk down super dark alleys that are known to be dangerous. Interactions with dangerous people. You don't want to be in that cliche, like make sure you can run without tripping. There's a lot of these things that people need to be aware of, and you need to not be distracted so much. Unfortunately, with a lot of technology that we have, cell phones, tablets, and so on, it's very easy to be distracted, especially when you're scrolling through social media, you're shopping. I've seen issues of people driving and they're shopping, the other phone is shopping for shoes. Seriously, come on, get off your phone. Ultimately, you need to be aware of your surroundings, and just not be so easily distracted. So this is also another part of that question that we can tackle. It's a very broad question that we can tackle from many different perspectives.
Okay, anyone else want to say anything, put in 2 cents worth, or? Or do we want to go to the fun question of the day? Okay. Okay, everyone's smiling. So okay, let's go on to question 2. Debunking martial arts myths. Okay, now we've got if you have the list in front of you, we've got 26, 27 of them, okay, or 28, something like that. And I think rather than going through each of them one at a time, which will have us here for the next several weeks, I thought, unless someone disagrees, that we just go through them rather quickly first and determine, okay, is this a myth or does this have some reality to it? If it's just a myth, we don't need to discuss it. Let's try and go through these fairly fast, and I apologize for the time it'll take to do this. Okay. And then we'll go back and deal with the ones that are questionable. Is that okay with everyone? Is this in terms of efficiency? Okay.
Yeah, we can get started that way.
Okay. Taking a martial art will make you invincible, especially if you learn my style, you can beat up anyone. Myth or reality?
Kind of a myth, kind of a reality. It's a mentality thing.
Okay, so we'll put a question mark there.
It's only true of Budoshin.
Okay. Okay. I know the death touch. No one's. Is that going to be a myth?
Depends on who you are, Sensei.
What?
That's right.
It's what?
Depends on. It depends on. Well, I guess it depends on what time of life you touch somebody, right? Too.
Okay, myth. Okay.
Yeah.
Breaking woods 417 degrees and bricks high sound content plus spacers and making it easier to break stuff. Myth or reality?
I'm just curious for clarification on one thing. The 417 degrees on the wood.
My understanding, and I think I've seen it happen at 417 degrees, wood will burst into flame. So if you stick if you stick a piece of clear pine in an oven for an hour at 400 degrees, it can get pretty brittle. It's a lot easier to break because the wood has been, the drier the wood, the easier it is to work with, so to speak. And it puts
These folks have a lot of time on their hands. Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
Wow.
we'll go back and deal with that because I've had to deal with that. Little old martial artists, sensei, are the most dangerous ones.
It's a quiet one. They're very dangerous.
Okay. When you become a karate black belt, you must register your hands as lethal weapons with the police.
I grew up with that one.
Good myth.
Same.
Okay. Only those who have studied for years and years are able to really do martial arts.
That's the first one. As soon as you step into martial arts, you're a martial artist.
Okay, that's another myth. A highly proficient martial artist specializing in Qi can strike someone without touching them.
Oh, no touch martial arts. Myth.
I'm actually going to say there's some reality to that, and I can get into that later. Why are you using the death knot to secure your belt?
I have never heard of that one.
I never did either until I taught a seminar back east once, but we'll get into that later. That's a fun one. Okay. Well-trained martial artists can easily use subliminal suggestion to alter the behavior or actions of a potential assailant. I think that's going to be valid because we dealt with that in question number 1 quite a bit.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, martial arts will turn kids into bullies, make violent people more violent. Myth or reality?
myth.
It's a myth.
It's a way of channeling violence and aggression into something
So
constructive.
That's a myth. Okay. Martial arts are all about kicking and punching.
No.
No, throwing people is more fun.
You're guaranteed to suffer major injuries when you train in the martial arts.
Myth.
Myth?
Myth.
Yeah, I think it's unless you do something stupid. I've done that twice. Okay. Martial arts training is the great equalizer that will automatically let any small or weak person take out a larger untrained opponent.
It's a myth that can be trained into reality a little bit, just a little bit, unless you do
Same with the
Budoshin.
myth. The only martial arts worth knowing are the ancient secret styles taught by monks hidden away in fantastical mountains who never teach their mysteries to outsiders.
And yet here we are talking about somebody must know them. Okay.
Okay, moving right along. This one thing I read on Facebook is all I need to defend myself.
Myth.
Myth, okay, myth. The one punch kill. It's happened.
I would suppose it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a video I saw a couple months ago. I guess one person confronted another person on the street, and then a third person came up from the side and clocked the person on the side of the head with their fist. Person fell back, hit their head. That was it. They were gone. I practice the real style, not the watered down styles everyone else practices. Myth, reality.
That is reality.
You
I think
it's a straight face.
I think it's more mythic than reality.
Are you going to differ, Eric, or
I'm sorry since I'm
pardon? Okay. Question mark. Learning how to defend yourself from a dangerous situation takes years of training. If it's silence, I'm going to assume myth, because some people just okay. Advanced martial artists are the most dangerous to practice with.
That is a
That's a
myth.
myth.
That's a myth.
That's a myth.
Okay, a good, knowledgeable, and experienced martial artist is automatically a good teacher.
Myth.
Myth.
Myth. Studying martial arts will automatically make you a virtuous person.
Myth.
Okay.
Myth.
Unfortunately, myth.
Strength training will make you super slow.
Myth.
There is a little truth to that, but that depends.
A small bit of truth.
Yeah. Because
Unless you're Budoshin.
super slow, I'm going to say myth. My martial arts is better than your martial art. Myth. Okay.
Yeah.
Reality is Budoshin's the best.
Military fighting systems such as Krav Maga are the best self-defense system to be learned for self-defense.
Such as the one that you said. Myth.
Okay, myth.
I think it's a combination. Yeah.
All martial arts come from Asia.
Myth.
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 Okay. Let's see. The one I added, I think, was reading all these myths will keep you awake at night worrying about Kato. Anyone who does not know who Kato is?
Bruce. Bruce Lee.
The Green Hornet.
The Hornet, yeah, the Hornet, and also
okay.
Peter Sellers, Pink Panther. His houseboy Kato.
Yeah.
My daughter used to do that to me all the time. I mean, she can take care of herself. I'm not worried about her, but she would, when she was younger, she would attack me in the weirdest places. Okay, just to see what I do.
I hope that didn't result in wrecking your house the way it always did in the Pink Panther movie.
We had to be careful. We had to be careful. Okay. Pressure point myth. The pressure point is where the nerve splits in the Y. Then you have to read that lengthy article below.
Yeah, that's the first I've heard of that.
Right.
I put a question there because I kind of disagreed with that part of the article. Okay, let's go back here and have a little fun. Question mark was on taking martial art will make you invincible, especially if you learn my style. You can beat up anyone. Is that what?
Basically, the idea of feeling invincible is I said initially that it's a mentality thing where if you're learning a martial art and you're able to do all of these techniques and skills on a non-compliant person, you start to feel like you can do anything, and you start to feel that you are invincible, especially if you're for the younger person. I used to be young too, so it's that feeling is there where you're the Superman. I can pick people up and I can toss them up in the air, throw them, or I can do those fancy jiu-jitsu locks or other karate punches and kicks, just spinning aerials and so on. You can have that feeling of being invincible. So I think that's where that myth comes into play.
Okay. Have any of you, and I'm going to ask this, and probably maybe only one or two of you can really respond. Have any of you been in a street situation where what you have used didn't work and you had to do something else real fast? I mean, that's a real, how do you say? I think that's a real come down. I mean, I've been there a couple times. You know,
I've been there a couple of times. I don't know that it was
it's humbling.
the part where, I don't know that the part where the technique applied wasn't effective. More of the technique applied did exactly what it was designed to do, but in a classroom environment, the result of the technique is different than the result of performing it in a real life scenario. What I mean by that is if you're doing something that is going to compromise a joint lock, such as the wrist, that threat, instead of in a classroom environment where the uke takes a fall out of the technique, in a real life environment, the threat is still standing right in front of you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've had techniques that don't work the way they quote unquote supposed to, and then you have to modify what you're doing, and real fast you have to have something else.
Right, and you have to move on. You have to be able to move on and understand it.
Yeah.
Yes, transition to another thing or something else. Yes.
There's an old rule I picked up somewhere, which is don't try the same thing twice. So, okay.
I can just add something. I think having martial arts training is confidence building, which is good in street situations, or feeling that if something did happen, that you're better prepared than most people to deal with it. But on the other hand, it's like wearing a helmet if you're playing sports, where the helmet is a good thing if you experience a head injury, but it's not preventive to every attack. It won't work 100% of the time. And to feel that just because you're wearing a helmet and going skiing that you can't get seriously injured is foolish. That's the analogy I see, that you have an advantage with martial arts, but it's stupid to think that it's going to be relevant and some permanently strengthening thing that will make you invincible. I think that's going too far. It's a matter of degree.
Great analogy.
Right. I mean, sometime the other person has Krypton. If you're familiar with the analogy. Okay. Next one down is breaking wood and bricks. We used to, back in the 70s, early 70s, we used to use 1-inch pine, and we just, it's amazing. You can do this with people that are untrained. If you give students a little instruction, even a 10 or 12-year-old kid can go through a one-inch piece of pine if it's held properly, and if they hit it properly. I used to be able to go through 2 inches. We didn't use spacers back then. What stopped us from training with that, it's great for kids. Kids love it. Because it kind of lets them know that they really can do a lot of damage with a good knife edge or whatever else you want to call it. But what stopped us from continuing this was that clear pine got to be too expensive. When it went over $1 a foot, at that point I said, let's try the plastic boards. And they are better now, but the initial ones were, if you didn't hit it right on where you were supposed to hit it, it didn't break. And that was your tough luck. And we stopped using those because of the safety factor. But yeah, if you put wood in the oven for an hour or two at 400 degrees, it becomes much easier to break. And any of you have been in construction, building construction? If the higher the sand content in concrete, the less strong it is. So if you get your martial arts bricks custom made, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't take a good effort to break them, but they're not the construction bricks. And there is a difference. And some people, how do you say, I won't say they cheat, but some people will be creative in their use of resources. It's like asking you to fold a piece of paper 8 times. It won't happen. It can't be done. Any size, it cannot be folded 8 times in half. But anyway, anybody know the advantage of using spacers if you're having multiple pieces of wood? And there's nothing wrong with this. It's just you need to be aware of it. You know, it's just the general public isn't aware of it generally. What is the purpose of the spacers?
Let's that momentum continue through.
Yes, you got it. It allows your impact force on the first board to supplement when that first board, because there's a spacer, it can now hit the second board with a certain amount of force, and your hand continues through as well. And so you've got these boards that are actually reinforcing whatever you're doing. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just you need to know. Okay. Little martial artists, we took care of that. We're the most dangerous ones because we're more subtle. And as you get more experience in the martial arts, I'm sure you know this as sensei, your moves are not as visible or quote unquote large as that of a newer student. You also know a lot more. Okay. Okay, a highly proficient martial artist specializing in Qi can strike someone without touching them. How many of you, go ahead.
So in other words, if I grab your head, you can get me across the room?
No, what I'm saying is, if I come in with a strike and stop about a ½ inch in front of your nose, what is your body going to do?
It reacts, it flinches.
It's
Yeah, I
going to,
remember
it's going to, your head's going to come back, or you're going to take a step back to avoid getting hit. But the effect to some extent is the same, because now you're off balanced. So you can, you know, if with most Americans, our how you say it, our courteous distance from each other is about 18 inches, 2 feet. When we talk to each other, we're about that far. But if you step in really close to a person in this country, what do? They will back up. Okay, that's your key. I mean, we got to go with the flow here. No pun intended. I know when I got into high school, and high school is that we had 52 languages spoken, and in many East European cultures, people get really in your face, and it's not an, how do you say, it took me a while to adjust to the kids being right in my face, and they weren't confrontational. It's just a different culture. And so to an extent, if you reach out towards a person, they may step back and you haven't made any contact. So does the myth have any validity?
And by the same token, it can be considered rude, say in Mediterranean culture, where you have people who are used to touching each other, males among males patting each other constantly, and that's true in some Arab cultures also, with kissing and touching are just part of life.
Right.
And to resist that, it's like, well, you're not adapting to our culture. So it's a very culturally sensitive.
Cultural thing. I know with my Russian students, I had to get used to, whenever they came into the room and left, the males would always shake my hand. And that initially to me was, this is weird. But then you realize they're just saying hello. And that was their way of doing it. And but then a good handshake can trap your hand if you're right-handed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm left-handed. How many of you left-handed?
I can be a little ambidextrous.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on here. Okay. What's left? Why are you using the death knot to secure your belt?
Wait, what is that death knot?
What is the death knot? Okay, a couple of decades ago, I was doing a seminar back east, and one of the students, I said, does anyone have any questions? And one student said, why are you wearing the death knot? And being, like I was thinking like 5th or 6th degree black belt that time, I said, I've got to come up with an answer here. And I came up with, well, that's what Seki taught us, because this, as I said, if you read the notes, that the death knot means you're willing to defend yourself to the death, which is actually pretty accurate, and everyone bought into that. And
Well done.
I try to chuckle about it, but it does make sense. If you're learning a martial art, you're learning it to protect yourself and keep yourself alive, and so you have to be willing to, quote unquote, defend yourself to the death. Because sometimes you really have no alternative. So anyway, also it's a very secure knot. The same knot, by the way, if that knot was tied in and of itself again, the same identical knot, back in the late 60s, early 70s, I was doing a lot of backpacking and actually learned how to rappel and that stuff. And we wore what was called a diaper. And everybody had their own diaper, which was nylon webbing, and you fit it to just fit yourself, around your waist and crotch, etc. And the knot that was used to tie it was the same knot that we use for our judo gi belt, but it was tied in and of itself a second time. The only way to undo that knot is to cut it. Once you tie that knot, double tie that knot, it can't be undone. So
I noticed, George, in your in the initial handbook you give out to new students,
yeah,
it has an explanation of how to tie your belt correctly, and the arrow, the point that's made through the square knot is pointing right. I think you specify right, I believe. Is there significance to that? And is there a correct or incorrect way according to the art? I'm curious if anyone knows.
Why it's pointing to the right?
Yeah, versus pointing, you can tie it the same way, slightly.
And have it pointing to the left.
Yeah.
I know that.
Or does anyone have any thought on that? Is it rude to do it the wrong way?
That's the way Seki did it. I mean,
Okay. Yeah, I notice it varies. Some specify going left.
I know, but I guess that one pointing to the right is the death knot. So
Okay, all right, gotta have that.
okay.
We had learned it that way as well, Tom, in the other styles that I did. And then any rank stripes would also then have been on the right side, which can be a trick when you're double wrapping a belt to get a student to realize how to start so that it ends up on the right. But that was just how we learned it early on.
Someone could write a book on this, probably.
Right.
No, I've seen belts tied so many different ways. It's just, I don't even, go into the issue with senseis or students anymore. Okay. What else is next down here? Let's wander down to number P, the one punch kill.
That can be a reality. You already gave one example. That is also the training methodology in something like Shotokan karate with the one punch kill types of strikes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you could. I mean, you don't even have to be a martial artist. I mean, if you have a really heavy duty punch, you could theoretically kill a person with one punch. I don't know how. It doesn't require martial arts training. Okay.
May I make one comment based on an experience with a different art there, Professor? So one of the styles I cross train in is Okinawan white crane karate, and my instructor, who's still living, he lived in Okinawa for about 10 years and trained in a classical Okinawan dojo. And he said, and if you were to talk to him now, he would tell you that he has serious onset of arthritis in his hands in particular. And it was because in a 2-hour class setting, meeting 4 nights a week, the last 30 minutes were always hitting traditionally made Makawara boards. And he said, over time, you develop this amazing club of a hand. And he said, any punch becomes really fierce and debilitating. He said, but it's because you're continually striking and making this bone formation. He said, you're going to pay for it later. Now he's much more in the soft side of his art. But I think the genesis of myths like that is you're basically making your hand into a weapon because you're always hitting something hard. And if you turn around and hit somebody with that kind of calcified hand and hit them just right, it's going to do more damage than mine probably would on any given day. And he's not an advocate of it now, but he said that's how he's classically trained in Okinawa.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hit at my age now. I'm probably younger, and mainly because of my training with Seki. I would never hit anyone with a fist because the chance of me injuring my hand is so much greater. Yeah. It's either going to be a palm strike or a backhand, and that's going to be just about it. Now, the only time he had us hit with a fist was to the solar plexus, and he kind of said, "You never hit a hard surface with your fist."
Yeah.
Anyway, Okay, moving right along. I practice a real style, not the watered down style everyone else practices. Anyone want to give that credibility?
Yeah, there is a little truth to that, especially with some Eastern martial arts like Kali or Silat. You have these types of martial arts that are passed through the family generations that they don't teach the full martial art. They teach like the general part of the martial arts, but as far as the secrets, it's the secrets of the family art that's more on the super destructive side of the art. They tend to keep for themselves. I think one very good example is a type of Kali called Sayok Kali. If you guys have seen the movie The Hunted with Tommy Lee Jones, that's a very good example of how brutal that art can be. Um, Oftentimes, we tend to not cheat the most dangerous portion of the martial art to the general public because we don't want it to be used inappropriately.
Okay, I think there's some truth to what you're saying in terms of there are techniques that I will reserve to teaching upper belts. And I think part of this goes back to our responsibility as sensei to weed out students who we think have dubious motives for learning a martial art. And I feel fairly safe in teaching most of my students anything I've learned. Because we tend to do that fairly early in the game. Because I don't want to have to worry that I've taught something to someone who might use it inappropriately. And usually, and not to pick on a particular age group, but usually this is young male adults where you have the greatest issues with. And but we managed to sort them out usually by the end of the first 10-week training session, because they display a certain attitude or they want to learn certain things that tend to be higher on the violence level than I think a normal or rational person would use in most cases. And there's even stuff that Harold Brocious taught that I'll teach him in I call it counter assault class. I don't like to call self-defense classes self-defense, because that to me is self-defense means it's too late now, or you're stuck defending yourself. Counter assault, I use the term counter assault because you're fighting back. And I try to keep it more positive. I think, for lack of a better phrase, defending yourself has to be a positive action rather than a negative defensive action. I mean, even though our philosophy says we shall not attack first, once someone launches an attack at you, you do have the right to protect yourself and do whatever is quote unquote reasonably necessary to protect yourself. And your key, and hopefully it doesn't go to court, is being able to justify what you have done to your attacker. And that I think is the issue, at least as far as, you know, defending yourself is concerned. But yeah, I there are things I will teach in a counter assault class that I don't teach generally don't teach in regular classes, except to upper belts. And upper belts for me are brown belts and up, because that's where I learn most of the stuff. Anyhow, but again, there's some, as Eric said, there's some mysticism to you keep it in the family, and the purpose of the den show is to give that information only to your most senior student who you trust will carry on the art, and all of that is a really nice mythology, but I don't think it works in the real world. Whether that be good or bad is another matter. Okay, let's go on here.
Sensei,
Yes.
I apologize. I have to bow out a little early today. I have some people that I need to go address. Get with.
Make sure they treat you well.
Yes, Sensei. Everybody, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I'll see y'all on the
Take
next
care.
session.
See you, Darren.
Thank you. All right, have a
Congrats
great
on
day.
that cross cert, Darren. Well done.
Yes.
Thank you, TJ. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Okay. Where are we stuck here? Where are we here now? Okay.
How far down the list have you gone so
We've
far?
actually gotten pretty far. We're down to Q, and the only other questionable one left, which was strength training will make you super slow. And that's a lot of muscle mass can slow you down, but it isn't going to make you super slow. It can slow if you have a ton of muscle mass. It can slow your movements. It doesn't mean you're out of shape, obviously, but your responses may not be as fast because you're dealing with all that mass.
I can kind of see that as like I do a lot of strength training, a lot of heavy weight training. Like my legs are basically tree stumps, and I do see some of that, but like if I'm trying to pick my legs up for a kick, it takes some time to bring my legs up. But if I can launch them and they connect, I only have to hit the person one time.
Well, I'm not saying what you I'm not saying what you do won't be effective. All I'm saying is that, as you said, it may take a little longer to get to that point because you have to move so much mass.
Right. Like it. If you can also train your muscles to be able to launch faster with that mass, it's kind of like taking a baseball bat with the weight at the end. You take a couple of practice swings, and then you take that weight off. Now you can swing it a little bit faster. You know, the same concept is there. Learning how to use the mass of your meat hooks, it can bring the fight over to your side. It's just learning how to use that mass to your advantage.
Okay, I think part of the issue is, I mean, I've run into some people that are exceedingly well built. I mean, and the problem they run into is that they end up, because they built so much muscle mass, they haven't also worked on maintaining their flexibility. And so they've got all this mass, but they can't move it in certain directions efficiently. And so if you're going to go into strength training, you have to also I would think spend as much time working on your flexibility, because your flexibility will allow you to use that muscle mass more effectively. It's
Yes,
kind of
I
like,
agree 100%.
it's kind of like your baseball bat. If you put a weight on it, okay, if you don't know how to swing the bat, and if you can't swing the bat its full range, its value, it doesn't have any value. You understand what I'm saying? You've
Oh,
got,
I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
A lot, the flexibility and mobility is that's basically what I was talking about. You need to have full range of motion, and you need to have strength in that full range of motion.
right.
It's kind of like if you're trying to do splits, a lot of reason why we can't do splits is because we don't have strength in that extreme range of motion. Once you build up that strength, now you can build your splits even further. That's one example.
Okay. The only reason I mention this is because as a person ages, your flexibility is going to be more important than maintaining a lot of muscle mass. Also, I think it's after age 30 or 40, it takes twice as much effort to build and maintain the muscle mass as compared to when you're younger. So, I mean, to me, I'm 77. I'm pretty flexible. I'm more but I've been doing flexibility exercises for the past 50 years, and it's just it's like a 10-minute sequence that I do three days a week, roughly. And I tell my students, you're not going to build muscle in this class. You will build flexibility, because that's what's going to save your butt. If you have, I'm not going to negate strength. I never will, because strength is a good asset. But you've got to be able to move that strength, and then what moves that strength is your flexibility. So that's, and I'll never negate. People will say strength isn't necessary in the martial arts. Yes, it is to some extent. If you have your technique down, strength can help, but strength is not an excuse for poor technique. You can force your way through many techniques, but that can be a lot of work. And I mean, if you look at people like, if you looked at people like Wally J, I mean, these, or even my sensei, and even myself to some extent, these old codgers didn't move much, but they sure did efficient technique execution. And I don't mean I don't mean old codgers negatively. These are the little old martial artists that are the most dangerous ones.
In Al's system, Qigong, I've learned is critical for developing flexibility, keeping that flexibility as a complement. Is that you found that, Al, that it's just critical as part of normal martial arts practice? And I think you said you got a lot out of that over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you get older, right? As you age, you get tighter, and you start to feel like some pains you never had before, and it can certainly be beneficial to the martial artists or non-martial artists. That's why it's a big part of my life.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, and I'm sure Al will agree. You have to have that flexibility. I mean, to me, it's my martial arts experience I signified the importance of maintaining my flexibility, but that flexibility also affects everything else I do in life. And I think that recognition is what was, it wasn't intentional, but that's what to me, that's the way it is. if you don't have your flexibility, for lack of a better phrase, you're a piece of dead meat. And that's so essential. You know, you got to keep moving as long as you can.
That point that Tom brought up about Al and the Qigong, my personal experience has been the same. If I could go back and talk to TJ in 1984 when I was starting martial arts, I would tell him, start doing Qigong now and do it regularly. It will change the way everything else happens in your martial arts career. And without it, you'll pay a price. So I'm grateful. I got to it late, but it's very important.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different ways to maintain your flexibility and ability to move. And I think that's, you know, I think that's one thing so many people miss. They're so much into building strength and stamina. Well, stamina is important too, but they're so much into building strength that they let the flexibility, which is what makes strength valuable, go by the wayside. And then you pay the consequences. I mean, even when I had, you know, I've had a left knee replacement, left knee joint replacement, right shoulder replacement. I'm at maximum flexibility for the artificial joint on both of those, because I asked the doctor, you know, I asked the doctor, how far should I be able to, how far is the joint, artificial joint, designed to move? And that became the key for my physical therapy, continuing physical therapy, even after the physical therapist said, you're fine. And that to me was part of my concept of flexibility. I think you have to exercise your joints to the extent to which you can, or they're designed, or you're capable or designed for. Anyway, we have, I don't know if you want to get into the pressure point myth thing. Anyone want to, I mean, I made a comment in there after it.
The issue I have with that is that I don't really understand the myth. Pressure points work less so when adrenaline is in play, but I mean, it's still effective at controlling aggression. But as far as the splitting into a Y, I don't really understand that part of the myth. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the Y was either, how do you say, I had difficulty with the Y concept, because either their nerves come, you know, nerve groups come together in certain points where you have nerve clusters, and we tend to use those as pressure points. Okay, so to that extent, you could say that's sort of a Y. But when, and then if we say the Y splits, you've then got to say, okay, from the nerves do tend to split into more minor nerves. So if you turn the Y upside down, it splits, you know, the nerves split off into more minor nerves. But I didn't, I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if it's a proper analogy to use the letter Y. I mean, I can sort of understand it, but that's not from what I read in this article. It's just based on the other, you know, what I know of nerves and how they branch off, and
Right. That's the same thing with me. It's my understanding of how the anatomy of the body works. It's just relying on that information and how the nerves work, how they branch off and so on. That's how I'm basing my knowledge of the pressure points.
yeah.
Just on the actual anatomy of the body.
Right. But anyway, so I don't know really know where he's at and why there's a myth there, or whether it's, you know, I've never heard of the why myth before. It's sort of to me, it's sort of like the Death Knot myth. Anyway, okay. Do we want to? Looking at this epic here, it's 9:22 right now. Do we want to? And this is one of Gary Whitus's questions. As to protective gear, padding, and armoring, in ancient Greek, Olympian men fought naked as they were born. Do we want to deal with this now, or do we want to save it for next time?
I feel like we can add at least 30 minutes to the conversation, at least what I want to say on protective gear, so we can save it for the next topic.
Yeah, because I think, yeah.
And it'd be fun if Gary was here.
Yes.
That'll spice it up a little bit too.
Yes.
As long as we all keep our clothes on. Yeah.
You're right.
That's exactly right.
That's
Tom.
true.
Well
Yeah.
said. That's right.
No shots below the armpits. Anyway.
That's right.
Okay. So with that in mind, I think we're going to end this session, and we've taken care of all the myths in the martial arts.
We need to come up with some more myths.
Well, that was to guess some of these. I actually went online and looked up martial arts myths, and this isn't all of them, but some of them are really way out there. And I didn't even want to, deal with them. But this was, it's amazing what you can find on the internet, and scary too. But anyway, we have our next meeting is going to be on the today's the 18th. Next one will be on February, I think it's February 5th, first Saturday in February. I think that's the first February. Let me check here just to be sure.
Professor, are you going now to monthly, or are you still doing twice a month?
I'm still doing twice a month.
So if today's the 8th.
Oh, today's the 8th. Okay, then it would be the. I'm sorry. I'm ahead of myself. Today is the 8th.
22nd is Tom said.
22nd, February 22nd. Yeah, February 22nd. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to confuse.
January 22nd.
Yeah, January 22nd. We're not into February yet. Okay. So I want you to have a good 2 weeks. If you have any other topics you can come up with, they're more than welcome. We only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 topics that are on our current list. So if you come up with an idea, let me know, and we can add it to the list. Anyway, so Thomas can now go inside.
I got to stay outside for my cane stuff,
right,
unfortunately.
the cane
But
stuff,
at least I'll be moving around a lot more than
right.
maybe
That'll warm you up, and you'll be raising a little cane with the Canaanites.
Right.
Bad.
Add that to your list of puns.
You you can give out candy canes at the end of class. But anyway.
Right. Leftover. Right.
Sometimes it's doing the really stupid stuff at the end of a class that'll make people remember the class. It's anyway. So enjoy it. There is. I just saw someone who was doing a show. They sent me a video on cane techniques for really old people, and it was someone's. It was like a late night talk show on TV. They did a satire on the cane instructor.
Yeah, that was me. That's Mark Shuey. Mark Shuey is the guy I work with, and
that was good.
He was on Colbert, the Colbert Report, and then Chris Cuomo when Chris Cuomo was still around. But that got it was in the Wall Street Journal, and combining, as we were talking about earlier, a lot of exercising and stretching with the cane for older people who have to use a cane, that being a way into a discussion of how the cane can be used for self-defense. It's a nice holistic connection there. So
Right. It's amazing. I had decades ago, I had a black belt who actually came up with a series of techniques for people who are using walkers, older people who are using walkers. And it's amazingly easy how to break an attacker's ankle with a walker. And it's just done in one step, pardon the pun. But yeah, we tend to overlook.
and the common
We tend to, I'm going to add
that's the great benefit of the cane is you can take them anywhere, including airplanes.
That's right.
And because it's so common, it's underestimated as a potential self-defense device. And
I'm going to add one in here. I'm going to add in the term empty hand techniques, tech extensions to household. I think one of the last seminars I did for Thomas Salander back east was, I did it was called an empty hand seminar for, I think, for about an hour or two, but I had the students bring kitchen utensils, except for knives, no knives. And no cooking forks. And, you know, they learned how to defend themselves with cooking spoons, spatulas. We did some damage to the kitchen tools. They wouldn't be used in the kitchen anymore, but it's to me, part of your jujitsu training is having the ability to pick up almost anything.
improvised weapon,
And make it into a useful weapon.
It's good for domestic issues that come up in the kitchen, you know, also if you really need to defend yourself from an aggressive family member.
Right.
Right.
On the holiday season, you never know when something's going to happen.
Pick up
Well
that
said.
pick up that rolling pin. Anyway.
Or a cast iron pan.
Or a frying pan.
Right.
Especially if it's cast iron. Anyway. Okay. Let's everyone have a good weekend. Enjoy yourselves. I hope the weather is decent wherever you're at. I know there's some lousy weather in parts of the country. Anyway, so take care, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Al, for joining us.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.